Hi, I want to show you some basic and effective tools using SharePoint lists. We all know how much we love Excel, but it's time to transition to SharePoint lists. The power of SharePoint lists lies in their ability to create solutions easily, without the need for coding. Let's start by creating a vacation tracker. We'll begin with a blank list. This is our vacation list, and I'll show you how to display it in site navigation. Here, you can see our site navigation, and I'll leave it visible to demonstrate how it works. Click on the Create button, and this is how the list is created. You'll have access to site content, the recycling bin, and the vacation list. By default, every list comes with a title column, but it's not mandatory. You can start creating your other fields here. Let's add a text field for employee name. This is not a required field, and you can hide this column if needed. Next, let's add a choice column for the status of the vacation request. You can include options like pending, approved, and rejected. Green indicates approval, while red signifies rejection. The default value will be pending, and this field is not required. Now, let's add a date and time column for the start date. As this is for a vacation tracker, we'll use just the date, not the time, and this field will be mandatory. Next, we'll add another date and time column for the end date, which will also be a mandatory field. For comments or notes, we can add a multi-line text column. This field is optional and can include rich text, which allows you to add images, tables, and hyperlinks. Let's also add a person column for the manager. This column allows you to select anyone in your organization, such as the employee's manager. We'll make this field required to ensure that each request is assigned to a manager. Now that we've created the necessary columns, we have our vacation list. If you were on the computer, you could go to add a new item, and all the columns will appear, including the option to attach files. If you prefer not to show the title column, you can edit the columns and remove it. Simply click on Edit Columns, uncheck the title column, and save the changes. After saving, you will see the changes reflected in the list. You might also want to hide the status column to prevent the user from selecting it manually. We can cancel the status selection, which means it will be hidden from the user view. Now, let's add a new vacation request. For example, John Bob is requesting time off. We'll select Steph Curry as the manager and hit Save. Once saved, you'll see the employee name, status, start date, end date, comments, and manager. The reason we use the person field for the manager is that we can set up rules in the list. For instance, when an item is modified, an email can be automatically sent to the manager for approval. We can set up a rule for when an item is created to notify the manager. We will set the first setting to always and select manager. You can also create a rule that, if the status is set to rejected, the item is sent back to the creator for review. We will select status, then change the new value to is one of approval or rejected. Lastly, we will select created by. This will send the email to the person that filled out the form. In addition, you can view who created the list item by enabling the created by column. If you're on the go and want to send out a form, you can use SharePoint's Forms tool. Create a new form for the vacation tracker, add attachment fields if necessary, and share it internally. Let's preview the form. This is how it will look on the user's computer or mobile device. The user can fill out the form, and once submitted, it will populate the list. For example, John Smith is requesting vacation from the 3rd to the 7th for fishing. He selects Steph Curry as the manager. Once the form is submitted, it appears in the list, and the manager can approve or reject the request. Another feature of SharePoint lists is the ability to add and change views. For instance, we can create a status board view, which groups the requests by status. This view can be made public so that managers can easily approve or reject requests. Once you approve or reject a request, it will be updated on the board, and you can change the status accordingly. That's how you can create a simple vacation tracker in SharePoint lists. Lastly, we don't want to forget about permissions on this. Permissions allow people to either write to the list, edit the list, or delete items. Let's go back to our home page, and we're going to wait for the permission settings to come up. Click on the permission settings. We have site permissions, so let's go to Advanced Permission Settings. You can see there are edit rights, full control, and read rights. If we go into the permission levels, we can see the different permission levels. For example, full control has full control design. You can add, update, delete, approve, customize, and read. With read permissions, you can view pages and list items and download items. If you have read permissions, you cannot add new items to the list. This is the one we want. We want the ability to add new items. In this case, choose Contribute. Next is Edit Permissions. With Edit Permissions, you can edit and delete items. Let's go back. We have our owners and members. These are groups. If you add anyone to these groups, they will have edit rights for your full site. The owners will have full control, and the visitors have read permissions. If you want to create a new group or create group, for managers, we want to set the edit permission. Let's create this permission. Now we are the manager. Let's go back, refresh, and you will see the manager listed. In the manager section, you can add a user or a new group. I could add Steph Curry. You will see the option to send an invite, then hit share. Now, Steph Curry has the editing rights for this site. However, we don't want the managers to edit this site. We could click on here, select Edit Permissions, and for now, we would just give the managers read rights. Let's go back to our home page. Now we have our managers, and they have the read rights. Next is the contributor rights. Let's do that again. Go to the Settings wheel, then to Site Permissions, followed by Advanced Permission Settings. Let's create another group, and this group will be for staff, with read rights. Let's create this. Anyone in our staff group, such as John Smith, will have these permissions. Let's go back to the home page and then to our vacation list. Go to the Settings wheel and list settings. This may be a bit confusing, but there are permissions for the whole site, and there are permissions for each element within SharePoint. For example, if you have a site and want to make a list private, you have to do it at the list level. This list has permission set at the list level. Here, you can see this button called Stop Inheriting Permissions. When you create a list, it is by default inherited from the site permissions. If you want this list to be private, just for the managers and staff, you can stop inheriting permissions. Now, you have something called Unique Permissions. Here, you can set everyone's permission level to read. Click OK if you want them to have read-only access in this list. You want the managers to have edit rights, and the staff should have the ability to contribute. That's it for your permissions. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found this video helpful. See you next time.